With Hashem's help, we're beginning a new series on Rambam, on Maimonides. Everyone is familiar with the Rebbe's institution of the learning of Rambam, the Rambam's magnum opus, the Mishne Torah, also known as the Yad HaChazaka. That in the course of a little less than 1 year, we learn through the entire 14 volumes, 83 subsections of the Rambam, which is the most comprehensive work on Jewish law, contains all aspects of Judaism. And the Rebbe emphasized the importance of learning Rambam. The Jewish people all over the world unite with the learning of Rambam. And in addition to learning the text of the Rambam, at least on a superficial level, the Rebbe encouraged that every day we take at least one part of the Rambam of that day, and we go into it in greater depth. So with that in mind, we're beginning this new initiative to focus on 1 or 2 paragraphs of the Rambam for the week in which these teachings will be studied by Jews all over the world. But before I begin with an insight on the Rambam, the laws of Deos, Hilchos Deos, Perek Gimel, I just want to say by way of introduction that, as the Rebbe emphasized, the Rambam personified with his work the idea of Achdus, of Jewish unity, because the Mishne Torah was written, as the Rambam himself says, Katan v'Gadol, for the young and old, for the people who are on a lower level and people who are on a higher level. It is intended for everyone, and therefore it has the capacity to unify all of the Jewish people. Another characteristic of the Mishne Torah that underscores the idea of unity is the fact that the Mishne Torah doesn't record any differences of opinion. Unlike the Mishnah, the Gemara, of course, unlike other major works of Jewish law which record different opinions, the Rambam has no citation of other opinions. It's the idea of unity once again. So I'd like to add a little insight, a caveat to this notion of unity represented by the Rambam. In his introduction, when he talks about the Babylonian Talmud, he refers to that region not as Babylonia, Bavel, but as Shinar. Shinar is the original name for that area, and that's the way the Torah describes the pre-Tower of Babel debacle, that it was in the land of Shinar, and the Aramaic translation by Unclus is Shinar is Bavel. Now, wherever you see the discussion of Bavel, of Babylonia, it's always written as Bavel. Throughout the Talmud, it's always Bavel. Very rarely does it refer to it as Shinar. Yet the Rambam seems to have a certain attachment to the name Shinar here in the introduction several times, and then later on in the text of the Mishne Torah. And it always bothered me that the Rambam would pick on that name Shinar. I thought, well, maybe Shinar has some very positive connotations, the word Shinar. And I looked into the Midrash, and it turns out that the Midrash has very negative ideas attached to the word Shinar. And yet the Rambam seems to have had this obsession with that name, Shinar. And then I realized that the Rambam was using the name Shinar perhaps to illustrate what is this Mishne Torah all about. See, in every area of life, there's good and there's evil, and the good and the evil parallel each other. It says in Kohelet, King Solomon says, God created this opposite that if there's something in the world that's negative, there's a parallel to it, very similar to it, but it's positive. What I'm submitting is that the Rambam's work, Mishne Torah, is the positive parallel to what happened in Shinar as a result of the Tower of Babel. So let's look at some of the features of this Shinar experience. when the Torah describes what happened, it says, "Vayihi chol ha'aretz safa echas udvarim achadim," and the whole earth spoke one language, which our sages tell us was Hebrew, Lashon HaKodesh, the Holy Tongue, and had a united cause. Well, I'm not going to talk about what their cause was. Rashi says it was against God. But the idea is that they had one language, the Holy Tongue, and one cause. What is the Mishne Torah? What makes it unique? Number one, it's the only work of a Rambam that was written in Lashon HaKodesh, in the Holy Tongue. All his other works were written in Arabic, Judeo-Arabic, or in Talmudic jargon, mixture of Aramaic and other languages, and a smattering of Hebrew as well, but it was not pure Lashon HaKodesh. So here you have the parallel of a work that is Safa Achas, one language, Udvarim Achadim, which means united. Not united words. What does that mean in terms of the Rambam? There are no disputes. You only have one definitive position without telling you that there are other opinions that disagree. And what did they want to do? They wanted to build a city and a tower. Now, we know what a city is. A city is a place that has many houses, and that, according to Sefer Yetzirah, is really what a book is. Because every word is like a house, because a word houses a concept. You have many words, you have a city, and the city that Rambam created is the city of holiness. It contains all of the teachings of the Torah. But in addition to being a city, it's also a migdal, it's also a tower. The tower is a metaphor for the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, because the Rambam, exclusively amongst the greatest halachic authorities, included and incorporated the laws of the Beit HaMikdash, the laws of the Holy Temple. So the Rambam's work is a positive and holy parallel to the Tower of Babel. The Rebbe, in one of his talks in the early years, spoke about what happened after the flood. After the flood, devastating the world, people got together to create unity, but it was the wrong kind of unity. So the Rebbe says now we have to create a different kind of unity, not shy away from the model of the Tower of Babel. Create a city, create a tower, but the tower should be houses of study, synagogues, places where Torah and mitzvahs are observed. And then the Rebbe comes along, without mentioning this specifically, explicitly, and he created a new city, a metropolis of Torah with this towering tower, this migdal. And for those who are into gematria, into numerology, numerical equivalents of words, the word umigdal and a tower adds up to 83. And what is the significance of 83? The Rambam himself writes in his introduction that this book is divided into 14 volumes and to 83 subsections. And there's a significance of the number 83, which we won't go into right now, that the Rebbe emphasized. And then if you take the word Ir Umigdal, city and a tower, that adds up to the word HaMashiach, because that's what brings Mashiach, this unity that of Torah and the unity of the Jewish people who get together to learn this unified Torah written in the Holy Tongue. This is what brings Mashiach.